Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marcus White.
And my name is Fight Mode Nick Cavalli. I am your Wrevolution Pro Wrestling Podcast World Heavyweight Champion. And we welcome you, as always, to the Wrevolution.
We're having all kinds of fun tonight. It's about as much fun as it looked like Triple H and Shawn did on Friday Night Smackdown. So,
well, you know, we get a little slap happy here in the booth, so...
Yeah, so this is your weekend wrap up. Yeah, and of course, as always, we're gonna go over Friday Night Smackdown results, Monday Night Raw results, and talk about a little bit of new stuff from this past weekend and week. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on into Friday Night Smackdown. So we kicked things off with the brand spanking new SmackDown Tag Team Champions, The New Day. Well, part of The New Day, Kofi Kingston and Mr. Big E. And they came out, they're all celebratory. Big E super happy, got a little bit rated R there for like a hot second talking about his late night activities. But they were interrupted by the Lucha House Party, more specifically Grand Metalik and Lince Dorado. I'm sure that made you very happy.
Those are my boys!
Yeah.
As we know, I have this unnecessary love and obsession for the Lucha House Party. You know, I'm always excited to see them on main roster TV.
So, I was glad to see them, come out. They congratulate the New Day, and they were like, yo, we want to be the first people to challenge you for the Tag Team Championships. And almost as if they were reading my mind, because I'm sitting here going, what about Miz and Morrison? Guess who comes out? Miz and Morrison. They walk right past the Lucha House Party. They make a beeline to the ring, get right in. They just go, Miz goes, really? Like, you guys are walking around like you're legitimate champions. And I love what they do here because they address every criticism that not only me and you, but the entire IWC have been talking about in regards to this whole New Day thing and what's been happening with the tag team division on SmackDown. They go, look, we've been getting screwed this whole time. Our first title defense was an Elimination Chamber. Second title defense at WrestleMania was a singles match triple threat. And our third title defense was another singles match. Like, you guys have never beat us in an actual tag team match, and you're claiming that you're actual tag champion. Like, you can't beat us in a real tag team match. As far as we're concerned, you're not even the tag team champions. Like, what? This is supposed to be the tag division. So I appreciate them coming out, having valid points, even though they're the heels, but saying, yeah, like, this is BS. Like, you never beat us in a tag match for the tag team championships. But,
and we've been discussing that for how long now, that it doesn't even feel like this championship reign means anything.
Yeah. And, I mean, it was weird, because, like, I felt like my whole thing was, they can't do tag team. I guess they couldn't do, like, tag team match or something, but we've been seeing tag matches. And especially from this past week, we've been seeing 6-man tag team matches. So I don't really understand what the whole thing was with that, but
I mean, at WrestleMania, we knew that The Miz was going to not be present because of his home situation.
Well,
but,
right.
Then he showed up, not even a week or two later, and had a triple threat match?
Yeah, which is why it's so confusing. But even more confusing is that out comes the Forgotten Sons. So I was confused as to really why they felt a need to come out. But then as the segment continued, it became a little bit more clear to me at least. So they kind of used this as an opportunity to kind of flesh out the Forgotten Sons on SmackDown TV. For those of you that didn't watch NXT or pay attention much to their character, now they're kind of doing not a deep dive, but, kind of coming out, explaining who we are, what we're about, and what our plans are going forward. Essentially, we've talked about it before. Their character is not like, we're all a bunch of former servicemen from the U.S. military who, when we got back to the United States, we felt like we kind of been treated like crap since we got here. And then same thing in our real lives in terms of, our wrestling careers. I feel like we've kind of been forgotten about. Like, people don't care about us. So, enough of that. Like, we're going to show you guys that, why you don't treat people this way, why we are going to be the best tag team on SmackDown. And I appreciated them coming out and having a little banter back and forth with the Miz. Miz looking at him kind of like I imagine you were looking, which is like, who are you guys? Why are you here? And I did appreciate them going back and forth. And even one of the guys, his name escapes me, looking at Miz and going, look, dude, you play a fake Marine in movies. I actually was a real Marine, so you need to show a little bit of respect. So I did appreciate that. And then things, as they always do, break down into a fight. And Forgotten Sons actually targeted the New Day in the fight, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, things break down and obviously leads to matches later on. So I liked the opening segment. I thought it was nice. It was a little cluttered though. I mean, I feel like you could have done the Forgotten Sons thing maybe in a different segment later on. I felt like we've seen this, every tag team comes out and tries to stake claim for the titles thing multiple times. So I kind of liked it when it was just the Lucha House Party and Miz and Morrison. Even that felt a little bit too much. You could have just bypassed the Lucha House Party and gone straight to Miz and Morrison just coming out and calling out the New Day for really what is the truth. So it just felt cluttered, but I got enjoyment out of it at the end of the day, so it didn't really matter to me.
This is the important thing. We are now setting up not for the match that we think we're going to get, but the match that we need. The New Day versus the Lucha House Party for the Tag Team Championships.
No, we don't need that. What we need is the New Day, the Miz and Morrison, to actually fight for the tag titles in a tag team match. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they got screwed out of their tag team reign, which didn't last very long, in a singles competition. So, I'm being honest with you, I don't care about the Lucha House Party. Again, as far as I'm concerned, they are here, and they need to work their way up before I go, cool, they're in the mixture for the title picture. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with them, but they're not where the focus of this needs to be right now, at least not in my opinion. But we move on now to something that no one's focus needs to be on, and that is King Corbin versus Drew Gulak. The only thing that comes out of this is that King Corbin now has qualified for the Money in the Bank match. Cool. Moving on. Sheamus defeats a jobber. Moving on again. We get so we do get a little bit of resolution from that opening segment. We get the Lucha House Party versus the Miz and Morrison. And you like this a lot, as Lucha House Party came away with the victory here.
Lucha.
So interesting result. I'm not gonna act like I saw that one coming, because I definitely did not. Nice for SmackDown to at least push Lucha House Party. Like, if you're going to put them in a tag team title match, then you need to score legitimate victories, and having them beat the former tag champions, I guess, helps to legitimize them as a stable.
Talk about this sounds so depressing.
It's not what I expected or had in mind, but I don't have an issue with it. If you're going to do it, at least this is the way to do it. So, good on you, SmackDown. The match was good. Lucha House Party, I never complain about what they do inside the squared circle. So they had a nice match. Miz and Morrison obviously great at what they do. Good match. Interesting result. Let's move on to something that I didn't like. That was Lacey Evans versus Sasha Banks. Not that the match was bad per se. I'm so over this quasi Sasha Bailey, but like Lacey Evans is also involved. Like, we're gonna get to it, I promise, feud. You've been, for lack of better words, blue balling us for like months now, and I don't care anymore.
I think the unfortunate downside is you're going to get both feuds. You're going to get Lacey versus Bayley again. I bet you Lacey probably wins that. And then Sasha Bayley, not for the title, just off in La La Land.
It just feels like we've done this before. We already did the Lacey.
We have.
We already did before. We already did the Lacey Bayley feud. Lacey lost. While they were doing that, you were also teasing the Sasha heel turn, or turn against Bayley. I don't even Yeah, that didn't happen either. We've been here before. Like, if you're, it just feels like WWE's got both hands in separate cookie jars. Like, if you're going to push Lacey. Put the title on her. If you're going to do the Sasha Bayley feud, do the Sasha Bayley feud. You can't do both. It's confusing for the viewer. It doesn't make much sense, and it's lazy. So let's go. Like, figure it out. Whatever you want to do it, but you can't do both at the same time. It just doesn't make sense.
You remember when I said I don't expect anything better than this from WWE? This is why. It's things like, we're gonna just throw Lacey Evans in the middle of a perfectly good feud.
Well, it seems like the one thing we've gotten from this whole, and I'm not gonna say the name anymore because it seems like YouTube is really against YouTube channels naming said crisis. So, but you all know what's happening. It seems like due to that, WWE's creativity has kind of been sparked, and they've been trying to try new things and experiment with a lot of stuff. The problem is, it seems like because they never get that opportunity, they're trying to do so many things at the same time and throw everything at the kitchen sink, and it's just like it's not working. Like, you can't just explode and, oh my god, this is all the things. Like, you gotta choose one and just roll with it. And that feels like right now they're trying to figure out what's working and what isn't working. And I gotta understand that it's probably difficult with literally no crowd reaction whatsoever to gauge how people are feeling. So you're having to go purely off social media reaction, which is already a pretty toxic place. So I'm sure that's not easy. And it's hard to go probably off of ratings because wrestling views have been going down across the board religiously for these past couple weeks. So I'm not saying that all of these things aside, it doesn't necessarily allow for an excuse in terms of just the confusion that we've been seeing. I mean, maybe that's a reflection of what's happening backstage, which, according to some news reports, probably is literally what's happening. But I feel like they need to just take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay, and let's figure out how we're going to push these storylines going forward into the future.
Good luck with that.
So Lacey Evans does pick up the win here against Sasha Banks. Although here's again the little bit of the confusion is that mid-match you had Banks and Bayley arguing briefly. So again, you're just in this, like, you got both hands in and you got to figure it out. Moving forward, we did get a video package covering the history between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. So more building up that feud. We actually didn't see either one of them on this episode of SmackDown, which was a little disappointing because I was looking forward to seeing how this was going to progress, but obviously, they're teasing it, building up to it. This is going to be a long-term build, so I'm okay with that.
We also get the information that we have two Money in the Bank qualifying matches, and it is the first couple of WWE. Otis and Mandy Rose, hoping to qualify. Mandy Rose goes head-to-head next week against Carmella. Otis will go head-to-head against Dolph Ziggler. Yay!
Who else, though? Who else?
Yay!
So
I thought WrestleMania resolved that part of the feud.
So next we get a women's tag team championship match. So I was very wrong. If you go back to our WrestleMania review, I was very wrong. in regards to how they were going to deal with the whole women's tag team division. They are apparently going full steam ahead. I mean, props to WWE, I guess, for trying. Here's the problem. This isn't Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, who they're fighting, isn't a tag team. They're fighting Carmella and Dana Brooke.
Yeah, see, this is the issue. Like, they hit the accelerator, they hit the throttle, they broke the head off the throttle, now they can't yank it back, so they're stuck with, like, Dana Brooke and Carmella fighting for the tag titles, and people are like, huh?
Well, this is part of the issue, and this is what I addressed, and I've addressed numerous times, is that if you want to go full steam ahead and push the women's tag team division, you can't because you don't have a women's tag division. There's like 3 tag teams in the women's division.
And almost all of them have been thrown together, except Fire and Desire, which is breaking up, and the Iconics, which has not been seen on TV in months.
Yeah, so This is why when this whole thing started and it was announced that there was going to be a women's tag division, I immediately said, why? Unless you've made a lot of signings that I just did not hear about, or you're planning on just bringing people up from NXT and smushing them together as tag teams, it didn't make sense to me. Your women's division barely made sense to me, so why you felt the need to make a tag team division in said division was just pointless to me.
Honestly,
and this just encapsulates that.
I value the idea of a women's tag team championship. I value the idea of a women's tag division. WWE has not shown a capability to make that happen. At the time that this happened, I was all title crazy. I was like, "Oh, make a cruiserweight tag team championship. Just put a title belt on everybody." But WWE has done such a poor job building this women's tag division that there's no point in creating any other divisions. The only thing that they have done correctly with new titles recently is the 24/7 championship.
Yes. Which, by the way, has not been seen because guess who's not in WWE anymore? So, even that, you're messing up. But, yeah, this obviously, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross retain their titles. Just... and it's not that it was a bad match. I don't care. Like, there's no hope of Carmella and Dana Brooke winning this match, so why even put it on? So, finally, we get to the Triple H celebrating his 25 years with the company. Why? Because Triple H. Does anybody else get a 25-year anniversary celebration? And it's funny because when Sean comes out, he actually addressed this. He's like, I don't recall where my 25-year anniversary celebration. You remember that? Can you point out one moment? It's because it didn't happen. So you're kind of poking fun at the idea that, yeah, you know, the golden shovel coming back out, Triple H, you know, he's got to be super important. And I love Trips. I think he's done a fantastic job with NXT. When he's been in charge of creative decisions on the main roster, I think he's done a fantastic job. But we can't sit here and act like because of what he's done such a great job in his corporate role that we forget there is a lot of years where my man was just getting shoved down our throats, and they kind of poke fun at that a little bit. Here's the funny thing though, and they even address this in the fact that while yes, Triple H has squashed a lot of people and been put over a lot, his WrestleMania record's horrible. My man has like 15 losses at WrestleMania in his 25-year career, which is not a fantastic ratio.
you face Triple H at WrestleMania, and you're not a former WCW guy, you probably have a great chance of going over. Excuse me.
Yes. So
I saw a lot of comments online about Smackdown about how this was actually Friday night Triple H appreciation, with the undercard being Lacey Evans versus Sasha Banks, Drew Gulak versus King Corbin in a tag team match.
It felt like that because the entire night we were getting flooded with promotions from like Triple H's career, like showing highlights of his 25-year career. We also got a little bit of that on Monday Night Raw too. So it just kind of seems like this is like just pumping up Trips' ego. And while I do appreciate that they had a bit of fun with it at the end, and it was kind of like a roast segment. So I do appreciate him able to take shots at himself, but you can't do you can't do that, but at the same time say, look how great I am. So it's just weird. It's a weird combination. But
the thing that I found most intriguing about this was actually that I entirely forgot what I was going to say. Poof.
Well,
gone.
I liked to kind of touch on what actually happened in the segment. I liked, that Shawn Michaels did come out. I enjoyed the fact that you got a little bit from Ric Flair, you got some from Road Dogg. They addressed the whole Katie Vick thing. Shawn Michaels poked fun at Triple H being married to Vince's daughter, Stephanie McMahon. I thought that was kind of interesting. Basically saying, hey, look, that's definitely part of your history. So they're not shying away from anything, the good or the bad. And then Vince comes out and he basically said what a lot of people, I felt like, at least from what I saw on Twitter, kind of felt about the segment. This was pretty boring, which I was fairly entertained because I just thought it was funny because I love seeing the interaction between Triple H and Shawn. But a lot of people did not. I mean, it did go long. It went 20 minutes. There were commercial breaks in between. But, I mean, if you didn't get a lot of the inside humor, if you haven't watched wrestling for a long period of time, I could see how it's wow, this isn't exactly the best. I mean, it was kind of the same thing what they did with the John Cena Bray Wyatt match. A lot of people went, "This is horrible," blah 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 blah. But it's if you understand wrestling and you've been paying attention these last 25 years, everything they did is like a wink wink nudge nudge kind of deal. So it's kind of what they did tonight. So I enjoyed it. But Vince comes out and he's like, "This, yeah, Trips, you're really putting the crowd to sleep here. If there was a crowd, I mean, this is awful. This is almost as bad as the." When you wrote that Bailey, this is your life segment, which I did think that was pretty funny. He then tells them to wrap it up, goes backstage, and they begin to literally shut down the show as Triple H and Shawn Michaels are standing in the center of the ring. So I enjoyed it. Not everybody else did. I can't wait to hear you guys tell me why I'm wrong. I'm sure I want to hear what Nick's opinion of this is.
Interactions with viewership. What a joke. So I remembered what I was going to say. By God, I don't know why my memory has been off the last couple of days. Maybe this was a part of his whole taking a demotion thing, Yeah, I'll take a demotion for the greater good of the company if you give me an appreciation week, Vince. But yeah, I didn't have a problem with the segment. I thought it was an interesting retrospective on a good portion of his career, both on the in the ring side, the corporate side. Triple H, one of the most important parts of this company, one of the most important parts of this industry as a whole, really, if you look at it. So it's interesting to look back at it. I mean, it's not quite a deep dive on Vince, which again, I can't wait for the possible biopic of Vince McMahon someday. That'd be great.
Yes.
But in reality, this is as close as you're probably going to get to a deep dive into a mind like this for a while, because quite frankly, a lot of this industry is secretive, and it's supposed to be. I mean, if it wasn't for Bret Hitman Hart, we might still be living in the kayfabe era. But so the secretism, I suppose, I can't do words today. Anyways, the secrecy, there we go. Secrecy of the business is always been a thing. It's been an important thing that has kept wrestling the way that it is, the innocence, if you will, of the wrestling fan. But this is an interesting dive into a pretty important character in the industry. So yeah, I thought it was important. Did it go a little long? Yeah. Was it the best part of the show? Yeah, probably.
So, with that being said...
That's not true. It was the Lucha House Party winning. Sorry, go ahead.
So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give match of the night. So, my match of the night is going to be the Lucha House Party versus Miz and Morrison. Your match of the night, sir.
I am going to agree with you. Lucha House Party versus Miz and Morrison.
I think my MVP is also pretty clear. It's actually going to be It's gonna be this is gonna be a weird one. It's going to be a tag team. If gonna break a little bit of a rule, it's going to be Miz and Morrison is going to be my MVP because I thought their interaction with the New Day and Lucha House Party in that opening segment was hilarious. I love, but best part was when Grand Metalik started speaking Spanish and Miz looks at Morrison and goes, "You wrestled in Mexico for a couple years. What's he saying?" So I thought that was hilarious.
He didn't wrestle in Mexico, dang it. He wrestled in California, okay? Or Texas, or wherever the godforsaken temple was.
Well, kayfabe-wise, it's Mexico, so...
I don't think it is. But, mine's actually going to go to Triple H. I'm taking this deep, maybe not super deep, but dive into his career and, taking some shots for accepting the role that he's had in WWE in the last 25 years. And
don't feed this man's ego trips for making a show literally all about you. You get MVP for the night.
It's Triple H Appreciation Week. How can I pick Triple H?
As I say this, as I'm wearing an NXT hoodie. Thanks, Trips. We love you.
I'm wearing an Inner Circle shirt.
So, moving on, let's go to Monday Night Raw. Well, this was... While SmackDown did a fairly alright job of entertaining me at points, Raw did not. So we kicked things off with MVP, and by the way, real fast, Samoa Joe's back, and he's on commentary again. Not that I don't love Samoa Joe on commentary, but you know what I love Samoa Joe doing more? Doing what he's getting paid to do, and wrestle. Don't know why that's not a thing anymore, but I mean, I guess seeing Samoa Joe at least is better than not seeing Samoa Joe. Is this their counter to having Jericho on commentary on Wednesday nights? It's gotta be, right?
Would it surprise you? But no one is Le Champion.
So, MVP opens up the show with his VIP lounge, and he brings out some of the Money in the Bank contestants. Apollo Crews, Rey Mysterio, Aleister Black. Doesn't really give any of them a chance to speak at all before Zelina Vega, Andrade, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza all come out. So, immediately, first thing that popped in my mind, first of all, it's the return of Latino Hour. With obviously some guests. I guess at this point it's just Minority Hour, but yeah.
I mean, other than Aleister, right?
Oh, Aleister and Austin Theory. But yeah, so they come out and Zelina Vega dresses down the three competitors in the ring, says you should all forfeit your opportunities to my guys. Obviously they took opposition to that, and they begin to fight. Cool.
And like Teddy Long, we're going to have a tag team match, playa. Holla, holla.
Yep. So, 6-man tag. Everybody loves a 6-man tag.
I'm not sure why my Teddy Long impression is just the JBL impression of Teddy Long.
So yeah, it's Apollo Crews, Rey Mysterio, and Aleister Black versus Andrade, Angel Garza, and Austin Theory. And 2 weeks in a row now, we've seen this lovely stable get absolutely pooped on because they lose. And now the match was good. I mean, as good as a 6-man tag team match can be. I get that.
Nope.
This match hurts because...
Don't try to explain it. Don't try to explain it.
It hurts.
Just understand.
No.
WWE had nothing better to do, so they booked themselves this match so they could book themselves another match so that they could take Apollo Crews out of Money in the Bank and give it to... We'll talk about that.
Well, here's the thing. They haven't announced who's replacing Apollo.
Oh, come on.
But I mean, yeah. I hope not, but yeah. So again, not a bad match. Just why did it didn't need to take place? Uh, yeah. I need to move on. We get Asuka, Nia Jax, and Shayna Baszler supposed to be a match, but it didn't happen. It just turned into a brawl. They just fight. Cool. Like I don't know. I mean, I guess here's the thing. WWE had kind of booked themselves into a corner with this match because you really couldn't have any of these three women lose this match at all. So I guess that's the easiest way to kind of wiggle your way out of that is just having the match not take place. But again, way to just tease something and then it just not happen. It felt like a lot tonight too. WWE was just booking itself in corners. Like, I mean, even with that first match, I mean, you can't have the Money in the Bank competitors lose because you're trying to make them look strong, but then you're also this stable that we're supposed to care about under Zelina Vega. Now they look weak again, so a lot of booking yourselves into corners there. Um, I I don't even want to really talk about the brawl just because it's just, your standard brawl. So we're going to move on to something that I actually did kind of care about a little bit, and I shouldn't, but I do. I don't know why am I interested in this, but it's the Bobby Lashley Lana angle. So Bobby and Lana are talking backstage.
You
and
sick bastard.
So Bobby and Lana are talking backstage, and Bobby's like, Lana, look, I think for the night, I should probably just go out by myself. And Lana's like, you don't want me in your corner? And he's like, no, it's not that. It's just that, look, you're kind of a distraction. She gets super, she's like, a distraction? And then he immediately goes, well, yeah, it's because you're so unbelievably beautiful. When I look at your eyes and your legs, I can't focus on my match. And Lana, she's just so like pleased and just so caught off guard. And, oh no, that I understand. No, thanks, Bobby. And Bobby's like, so you understand, all right? Cool. I'm gonna go now. So Bobby goes out and has his match against Denzel Dejournette. So here's the reason why I like this match was because I was looking a lot into this because there's a little bit of a little bit of back and forth between these two, and I don't know if it was necessarily scripted that way, if it was more of like a kind of man versus man thing. I don't know what that was, but there was first of all, they kind of locked up a little bit more of a mat wrestling style these two had. By the way, I like Denzel Dejournette. I even though he's not really done much, something about him. I like the guy, but they kind of tangle up a little bit. Bobby's obviously getting the best of him. And then he slaps Denzel at one point in this match. They, again, tie up, go a little back and forth. And then when Denzel gets the best of Bobby in one exchange, he smacks Bobby, to which I believe it was Samoa Joe goes, that was a mistake. And all of a sudden we get the debut of Angry Bobby Lashley, who then begins to tear Denzel a new one. But it kind of looked like, for the remainder of the match, Denzel didn't really want to sell for Bobby. I mean, I don't know, if I'm reading too deep into this, but it looked like he was sagging a lot for all of Bobby's moves. Sandbagging, sagging, same thing. So basically what that means for those of you guys that are not involved with wrestling terminology, it basically means that you're supposed to sell for your opponent. So when he does moves like a power bomb or a slam or something like that, you're kind of like leap up into it, make it easier for your opponent to pick you up. And it kind of looked like Denzel just wasn't budging. Like he just wanted to put all his weight, make Bobby do all the heavy lifting, which Bobby's a strong guy. He can do it. And he powered Denzel's ass up and put him down. So I don't know if I'm just reading too deep into that, but that's what I got. Bobby obviously picks up the victory with a spear. So Bobby looks strong as you can look in essentially a squash match, but I didn't hate this as much as probably I should have, at least.
It sounds like you're trying to will a Dejournette Bobby rivalry into existence. Now I'm good. I don't need that
No,
in
I
my
don't.
life.
No, it's not that I. First of all, no, it's not about a rivalry thing. It's just more about I felt like there was a little bit more. There's like maybe a little bit of heat between the two, which that wouldn't result in anything happening in ring wise. I'm just talking about the maybe chemistry between the two guys just seemed a little bit off during that match.
Understandable, I guess.
And that's kind of, I mean, that was what made it interesting for me, was just potentially, because whenever you see something like that, when you're in a match working with a guy, you guys are supposed to have perfect chemistry. You're supposed to be willing to take your blows and also dish them out. And it kind of seemed like Denzel just didn't want to take any blows, and he definitely wanted to dish some out. So that's kind of what I got from that. But I mean, again, it doesn't justify. It's still a squash match. It's not great, but it definitely made it a little bit more entertaining for me.
Sure. It was a squash match. It was bad.
All right, so yeah,
Squash matches are bad for wrestling. I mean, we have this discussion every Wednesday. Squash matches are bad for wrestling.
Yeah, and I'm not justifying the squash match. I'm just saying that I kind of got a little bit of felt like a deep dive into the psychology between those two. I just thought that was interesting. So, we move on to Liv Morgan versus Ruby Riott, which why at this point I feel so bad for Ruby. I get you're trying to push Liv Morgan, but poor Ruby, she comes back after being gone for a while, and has she picked up a win since being back? She's just been made to look so poor since returning. If I'm Ruby, I'm just like, what are you doing with me? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, obviously, I like Liv Morgan. I think she's got a lot going for her. I think she's young, talented, and she's definitely on an upward trajectory.
She didn't get released like Sarah Logan did, so that's a start.
Yikes. Yeah. But you don't have to have her absolutely squash Ruby Riott. I mean, this match was short, very short, and it didn't do a whole lot for their brewing rivalry.
Yeah, no, I felt like you could have done a lot more with Liv Morgan versus Ruby Riott as a rivalry, definitely. Not that I particularly care, but you definitely could have done more than what you did. But I guess in terms of reading the room, I feel like most people don't care. I feel like you're probably the only person that cares. So
I don't even care.
Yeah,
I like Liv Morgan. I don't even care.
Yeah, so reading the room, it's just kind of like, this doesn't really need to happen. I kind of just wish they'd move on and just let everyone get on with their lives. But Liv Morgan picks up the victory here. She cuts a promo after. Cool. We get a Viking Raiders promo. They essentially say, the world may call you champions, but we know the truth. And the truth is, as long as the Viking Raiders are around, you'll only be second best. We dare you to prove us wrong, because we want the smoke. So, calling out the Street Profits, obviously Viking Raiders kind of have been doing nothing for a while now. So, and everyone, at least I've been sitting here going, I want them to, get back to the title picture. So we're finally getting that. About time they remembered the Viking Raiders are a tag team on Raw. So I thought this was cool.
Yeah, these guys are uberly talented. I can't wait to see them go head-to-head with Street Profits. That's going to be a fantastic matchup.
Now, what wasn't a fantastic matchup, and what I have all sorts of opinions on, is Akira Tozawa versus the returning former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, as he was announced.
The modern day Maharaja Jinder Mahal.
So, first of all, I'm one of the small minority that don't hate Jinder Mahal. So I'm gonna put that out there right now. I don't hate Jinder, but at the same time, I have so much wrong with this. So first of all, it's so forced. You had him announced as a former world champion. You don't do that for anybody else. What is the point? It's just like you're automatically just going so we're going to make Jinder important now, just so you know. So down
Hey,
your
guys,
throats.
he was champion.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you guys remember? Do you guys remember when he was a champion? Do you remember? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's forced. And then for the second week in a row, Nick, who they choose.
I've talked about this.
Second week in a row. 2 weeks in a row, you have made Akira Tozawa look absolutely horrible. 2 weeks in a row. After we just talked about on Wednesday how you've done how
he beat Swerve.
We just talked about on Wednesday nights how you did so much from NXT this past week to build up the Cruiserweight division, how I have all these hopes and dreams that you're going to showcase them more. You built a whole episode of NXT around them. You're building this tournament and all the Cruiserweights are so important, yada, yada, yada. But it goes back to what I said. If we're supposed to believe the Cruiserweights are important on Wednesday nights, but then they can't pick up a match to save their lives, a victory, to save their lives on Raw and SmackDown, especially against someone like Jinder Mahal, which I don't care if he's a former world champion. The dude's been a borderline jobber. No, he's been a jobber the majority of his career. If you want to push him, that's fine, but can you pick somebody that's not in your tournament? I don't care if it's Akira Tozawa or anybody. No one in the Cruiserweight division, anyone in the Cruiserweight division right now that is fighting for this in this tournament should be nowhere near Raw and SmackDown. Unless you're going to actually put them over, they don't need to be on this show at all. Now, I've seen Akira Tozawa lose twice on Raw, 2 weeks in a row. I haven't seen him on NXT since the week prior. Last time I saw him on NXT, he was being put over Swerve. So, am I supposed to now then believe when I see Akira Tozawa pop back up on NXT, if he picks up another victory, whoa, golly gee, Akira Tozawa picks up a victory. He just lost twice, 2 weeks in a row. Like, what am I watching? This doesn't make sense.
50-50 booking, 50-50 booking.
100%. You could have at least made it a good match.
But you have to lose your next two on Raw.
And you could have at least made it a good match. This was a squash match. You had Jinder come out and make Tozawa look like he didn't even deserve to be in the same ring as him. He comes out, beats the crap out of him, hits the Colossus for the victory. I just saw Tozawa put on like a 3 to 4 star match with Swerve 2 weeks ago, but I'm supposed to believe he can't have a good match with Jinder Mahal?
Yep. Well, I mean, to be fair, I personally have never wrestled a brick wall, but I would assume it's difficult to put on a match with Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, at least, hey, the dude looks like he's in fantastic shape, referring to Jinder Mahal at least. He looks like he doesn't look like he did when he left, when he was like, there were borderline questions about the legitimacy of his fitness, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But the dude looks good. He doesn't look too good, but he looks good, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Next, we get an impromptu United States Championship match between Andrade and Apollo Crews, because reasons.
Okay. You and I have speculated on this for a while, as has everyone and their mother. Apollo Crews would be a great part of the Money in the Bank ladder match, but wouldn't it be great if we just threw in former WWE World Heavyweight Champion who just decided to come back this week, Jinder Mahal?
And, I mean, I've also heard other names. I've heard people saying probably Andrade might get thrown in there, or one of the people from the Selena Vega stable. I don't know. Either way, I don't care. You know why I don't care? Because it doesn't matter who you put in this, you took away an opportunity from Apollo Crews. Yes, you might be giving an opportunity because of this to somebody else that might even deserve it. But that the ends don't justify the means. You can't take away an opportunity from a budding star like Apollo Crews, who's been done just wrong, just plain wrong on the main roster since his main roster debut. Yeah. And finally, it seems like he at least has an opportunity to go out there on a main roster pay-per-view to be pushed and made to seem important because he's in Money in the Bank now, and go, oh look, now I have an opportunity to potentially challenge for a world title, and you just yank. Oh, by the way, Apollo, you're going to suffer a worked injury on Raw, and we're going to give your opportunity to somebody else. Have fun, cry about it later. Like, I'm so over this. If I'm Apollo Crews, I just go, he's a company guy, I get it. He's one of the guys that goes, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. That's fine. I'll do it for the betterment of the company. But I feel like at a certain point, especially with how things are, there should not be company guys at this point. If you work under WWE and you're being treated like this and you're seeing the way they clearly treat you and don't care about you or your well-being, there shouldn't be company guys. You get treated like this, I'm pulling a Matt Hardy and I'm saying, all right, I'm out. Bye. Let me go. I'm pulling a Revival. I'm pulling all of the people that said, I don't want to be here anymore because you don't know how to use me and my talents. I'm going to go to All Elite Wrestling. I'm going to go to New Japan. I'm going to go to Ring of Honor. And I'm going to be bigger and better than I ever would have been in wrestling entertainment. If I'm Apollo Crews, that's what I do.
I'm pulling a Cody. You guys have done nothing but ruin me since I got here. I will go make my name for myself. But yeah, Apollo Crews has done nothing but work his ass off since he's got the main roster. And to see him continually get things taken away from him, this just makes me absolutely insane. This guy is a bona fide stud in the ring, and you can't teach that, yikes. But he is he's just a great athlete. So I would love to see him get some more time. It doesn't matter who you're giving the opportunity to. In fact, I kind of hope it is Jinder, because I don't want to be angry at anybody else for taking Apollo Crews' spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match. And it doesn't matter who you give it to anyways, because Aleister Black's winning anyways.
Exactly. So although reports are not a lot of speculation saying it might be Baron Corbin again. I mean, you botched the first one so badly. Remember that? He's one of the 3 people to cash in Money in the Bank and lose. By the way, the other guy was John Cena, that's who he lost to. So it just there was so much wrong with that first one. I could see which you've been seeing WWE trying to go back and correct a lot of their previous mistakes lately. Maybe this is another one where they go, "Wow, we messed that up so horribly. Maybe we want to try it again," maybe. But I feel like that time has come and gone where now it's too late. You need to go with somebody else. I generally like Baron Corbin. I don't like necessarily what's happening right now with him, even though I did like the King Corbin character initially. It's gotten a little stale in terms of you just have nothing to do with him. It's probably because he's on SmackDown, but
yep.
It's just, no, I don't think anyone on SmackDown needs to win Money in the Bank. So it needs to probably be a Raw guy. If anyone needs it, it needs to be a Raw guy. So yeah, there's just so much wrong here.
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, but it does not exactly make me a happy camper, that's for sure.
No, Raw did a very good job of making me angry.
Yes, because we didn't talk about the result. Andrade wins.
Via stoppage, because, worked injury. Later on, we do see Apollo Crews in the back. He's on crutches. His leg is all wrapped up, and he's limping in the back, and they go for an interview, and he's sobbing uncontrollably, and he just waves them off. So I don't know if those are real tears or fake tears, but either way, it feels bad for Apollo Crews. Next, we get Ricochet and Cedric Alexander defeating Everrise in a tag team. So Everrise are a brand new tag team we haven't seen a lot of, but this was a squash match. Ricochet and Cedric, they look good. It was about as good as a squash match can be, but it was still a squash match. So good on you, Ricochet and Cedric, picking up the victory. But then after the match is actually what matters, because I don't know if he's their manager or if he's acting Raw general manager. I don't know what MVP is anymore, but Montel Vontavious Porter is seen on the Titantron standing with Brendan Vink and Shane Thorne, and
TM62.
and apparently they're going to challenge Ricochet and Cedric Alexander next week on Raw. But so I don't. MVP, what is your role on Raw? What do you do? I have genuine questions.
An essential employee right there.
Monday Night Raw is literally using up one of the roster spots that they don't have very many of them that they can use to put on the show. Neither the SmackDown. There's only a certain amount of people that can be in the building. You're using up an essential roster spot on MVP to do what exactly? I'm confused what his role is on Raw. At least if you make him the manager of TM62, then at least there's some clarity given to his role. I don't know what his role is though right now.
I don't either.
But
we'll find out, I guess, maybe if we're lucky.
We get to the end of Raw here with, I think it's the best segment of the night, and that's the contract signing between Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. They both get in the ring. As soon as Drew McIntyre gets in, he waves off Lawler, says, look, you know how these things go. It's probably going to happen again tonight, so you should just get on out of here. So Lawler leaves. They sit down, and McIntyre, he's just straight to the point. He says, look, we can do this in 30 seconds. Signs his name, hands it off to Rollins, says 30 seconds, do it, sign it, let's get it over with. Rollins, though, a little bit of hesitation. He then goes into this huge spiel about how he doesn't want to do this, and McIntyre, very deserving of the championship. You know, he's a fighter. He's a warrior. He's an athlete. He deserves this so much, but not right now because he's not a leader. That's essentially what it boils down to at the end. So he said, McIntyre looks him in the face and he's tries to play it as if he understood what Rollins says. Goes, wow, Rollins, that was really thoughtful of you. I really appreciate that. I see things clearly now. Everyone at home sees things clearly now. And what we all see is that you're full of crap. Of course, he didn't say that. But he then goes to say that Rollins essentially just needs to stop talking. I don't care if it's in promos, if it's at home, if it's on social media, just stop talking because you have this unique ability to tick people off every time, every single time you open your mouth. So I did appreciate that. He says, and by the way, to showcase that you're full of crap, where's your disciples exactly? They're not here, right? So he says, look, I don't know why you attacked me. I don't care. Look, in the day, you didn't finish the job. And when we fight, you need to finish the job. You need to go for the throat. Because I'm going to do that to you. So, I like the exchange there between Rollins and McIntyre. What'd you think of just the exchange?
I thought the exchange was good. I thought it built the feud up. And I think that this is going to actually result in a pretty good match. Thank God Brock's gone. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, seriously, though. So this doesn't end here as Rollins stands up. They look like they're about to fight. As Rollins says, you just need to believe. McIntyre clocks him. They start going back and forth fighting. McIntyre's getting the best of Rollins, but then speak of the devil and he shall come because one of the disciples, Buddy Murphy, he arrives. He attacks McIntyre from behind, starts stomping a mud hole in him. Then he goes to protect his savior, picks him up. They embrace, and for his troubles, Buddy receives a Claymore kick from Drew McIntyre. Rollins, of course, escapes, and that is how Raw goes off the air. So, looking forward to this match between Rollins and McIntyre. I'm interested to see how the disciples play into this. Obviously, again, as they noted, we haven't seen them. This is Brady, of course, being the first time we've seen a disciple on TV in a while. We don't know where the Office of Pain are going to come into this. We might see them in their match, maybe. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what Raw or has planned for this rivalry going forward, because I don't think it's going to end here. I think, especially with what Rollins was saying, he's being very ominous about this. I think this might continue for a little bit, and we might see a a building of the feud between Rollins and McIntyre. So I'm really interested to see where this heads going forward.
You and me both. I can't wait to see what happens.
Very, very insightful there, Mr. Fight Mode. So, my match of the night is going to be Jinder Mahal versus... No. Obviously, I'm kidding there. No, my match of the night is going to be the 6-man tag team match, as it's like the only match that's not a squash match on this show. So...
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I would have picked the ladies' triple threat, but didn't happen. So...
Yeah. MVP tonight is going to be Seth Rollins. I liked his promo at the end of the night. Thought it was cool. I almost wanted to give it to Drew McIntyre for the exchange, like what he said in retaliation, but I like the way Seth Rollins is sticking to his character, really fleshing out this Monday Night Messiah gimmick, and it's nice to see a return to that. So, yeah, my MVP is going to be Seth Rollins.
Originally, I had actually considered giving it to Jinder Mahal. I really thought about it for a while. And then the next match happened, and Apollo got hurt, and I went, wow, that's convenient. Yeah, not Jinder anymore. So I'm actually going to agree with you here. I'm going to take Seth Rollins as well. Like I said, this is going to be a build-up to a great feud. These two are gonna hopefully fight for a couple of months to come now. And yeah, while I may not have been very insightful at the end of our show, I'm truly very excited to have these two guys go head-to-head in the ring. Both of these guys are fantastic competitors, fantastic athletes, and they both do the graps particularly well. The one thing that's going to be interesting is to see how Seth Rollins deals with a guy who's bigger than him, but is just as athletic as him.
Yes, so... couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. #NapMode Nick Cavalli. So...
Hey, I mean, that's what happens when we talk about WWE. I don't care.
I think your little rant last week shows you care a lot more than you like to give credits to. So...
yeah, I mean, either I do care too much or I don't care, so...
So we're now going to move on to some new stuff. So, I'm going to kick things off with this news segment with something that ties into wrestling, but isn't necessarily it's not wrestling news, but it definitely ties in as we've seen these last couple weeks, and that's that our boy Vince Kennedy McMahon is getting sued. Yes, former XFL commissioner Oliver Luck is serving Vince McMahon for wrongful termination. So this is, of course, reported via Fox News. Says that Mr. Luck wholly disputes and rejects the allegations set forth in the termination letter and contends they are pretextual and devoid of merit. This, of course, coming days after McMahon laid off most of the XFL staff and 3 days before the league filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In May of 2018, Luck was hired by McMahon in a deal worth $20 million, and they have not spoken publicly about the league spinning its operations. The lawsuit seeks unspecified damages and attorney fees. To continue on, he says, Oliver Luck's services as commissioner and CEO of the XFL were terminated by a letter sent to him on April 9th, 2020, which explained the reasons for the termination, said a statement by Jerry McDevitt of K&L Gates, which represents McMahon. As to the lawsuit he filed, his allegations will be disputed, and the position of Mr. McMahon will be set forth in our response to the lawsuit. The rebirth of the XFL lasted only 5 weeks. It paid employees through April 12th, and last week it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy with assets and liabilities in the $10 million to $50 million range. So, just all bad news. Everything about this is just not good.
You done tried, Vince. You did the thing. You got the TV deals. You did everything you needed to do. This hit, and now, neither of your companies are particularly thriving. Well, one of them went bankrupt, so that's putting an understatement on it. Neither of your companies are particularly thriving through it. So just just like be a little careful, bud. We like wrestling.
Yeah, and again, I talked about this, especially at length off camera. This whole XFL situation is just so unfortunate. They had such a good thing going. You could tell they actually put care and thought into it this time, and they had a really good concept. It's just so unfortunate what took place. And now, obviously, what I was speculating was going to happen as a result, you had a lot of unhappy people going forward from just randomly being out of a job out of nowhere. Oliver Luck, of course, the father of former Colts quarterback Andrew Luck, clearly not happy about that at all. So a lawsuit is definitely what Vince doesn't need right now. This is not only not good financially, but probably not a good look for Vince McMahon, who's just been taking hits everywhere from the XFL, from the releasing of all the talent last week to this whole thing with Roman Reigns that is or is not happening. We still don't know. And then, of course, we had the thing with Dream happen last week, which I don't even want to touch on that really at all. But this WWE is taking so many hits from everywhere that things are just not looking good right now.
Alrighty, well, I do have a bit of information for another news story here, and not quite as long of one, but one with the same small level of impact on wrestling, I suppose. Cain Velasquez today was released from his multi-year, multi-million-dollar WWE contract, one of their most expensive PC editions, if you will. He had one match against Brock Lesnar on his 5-year WWE contract. Cain Velasquez was released due to the pandemic that we are currently experiencing and the things surrounding it. As such, I mean, this is one of the moves that, again, we don't want to see anybody lose their job, but one of the moves that we talked about at length when 30-plus talent were released from their contract. Cain Velasquez is making about the same amount that all of those people were combined. So this is one of those ones that maybe this would have been your first cut because he wasn't doing anything anyways. But as it is, Cain Velasquez, who may or may not actually be related to Rey Mysterio, is released from the WWE.
Well, I don't know if the article dives into this a little more. I don't know if you have the information. So with his release, does that mean what does that mean in terms of the money he was supposed to make going forward? I don't know if he already made all the money he was supposed to, like if it was a guaranteed payout or if it's an appearance-based thing. Do you know? Does it talk about that?
Traditionally with WWE contracts, it's something a little bit closer to a yearly salary, so you earn as you go. So they would say, 5 years at, $2 million a year, it'll come out to $10 million by the end of its lifetime. But instead, he's in the company for not even a year.
Not even a year.
So he probably hasn't even made the full $2 million. He probably made $1.7 million, and they just dispatched him.
That's what I wondered too. I was like, I wonder if they just went ahead and paid him his yearly salary, or he did make one appearance, a big appearance. So I don't know if they were like, all right, just go ahead, take your yearly salary and get out, or if they were like, because I don't know if they would treat someone like Cain Velasquez like they would your average run-of-the-mill wrestler who's just trying to make a living. Especially with WWE known for having great relationships with celebrities and sports stars, trying to keep those relationships healthy. I don't know if just cutting that tie and not paying, I don't know if that's good for that relationship, if you're even trying to keep that relationship. I personally wouldn't, but WWE loves their sports stars, so they're probably trying to keep that relationship as healthy as possible. So I don't know. I don't know what they did in regards to that. What do you think?
My assumption, of course, would be that, well, first of all, because WWE for the longest time has had the monopoly on the market for pro wrestling, they could pretty much put whatever they want into these contracts. I mean, immediate termination clauses, 90-day no-competes, like things that you don't... I mean, you see no-competes, but this is ridiculous. Some of the contract clauses that they're able to fit in because, well, it's either you fight here or you go back to the independent scene and go fight in the bingo halls.
Right.
So WWE is for the longest time had that ability. So I could imagine that, they paid him his 1.7 million or whatever they owed him and said, "Congratulations, Kane, you earned 1.7 million for a fight. Have a good one." I mean, to be perfectly fair, he made more money off of his one fight with Brock than he's ever made off a UFC fight.
Right. I just wonder if, like, because again it is someone like a Cain Velasquez, if you would definitely want to go about that termination a little bit differently than you would someone else, because it's not like Cain Velasquez is, again, your standard run-of-the-mill world. Oh, he's just going to go wrestle. Where you going to go, kid? Like, no, like, this is Cain Velasquez. This is a former UFC champion. I mean, he's not going to just, what are you going to do? Go to aid? I mean, for God's sakes, could you imagine, not Cain Velasquez maybe, but could you imagine a sports star, AEW getting a little bit more of that mainstream appeal, getting some guys like that popping up? I mean, while I personally don't always love having the real world athletes coming over into professional wrestling, it always does great to, I guess, legitimize the business, for lack of a better term, and to put your company on the map. So I don't think they'd want to take the risk of being like, yeah, just piss off, whatever, here's your money, and then maybe seeing Kane pop up in an episode of Dynamite a couple months from now.
Well, I mean, AEW does have their resident MMA guy in Jake Hager, so it's not totally impossible. I mean, yeah. Bellator's not quite the UFC, but
right.
Bellator probably probably the second biggest MMA company in the world. So, it's nothing to complain about there, and I could see that happening. It wouldn't happen with anybody in the NFL.
No.
It's just, sorry, the Khan family, as much as I don't dislike them, NFL players hate the Khans. Mm-hmm. So that'll never happen. But I think they could probably get some guys from other combat sports and stuff, boxing, MMA, to come over and work a couple shows. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how WWE handled this. I'm sure additional details on his release will come out later on.
Yes, well, we of course wish Mr. Velasquez the best in his future endeavors going forward. So next I have a story that could be fairly important going forward. It kind of addresses the speculation that I've had and a lot of people have had regarding this Braun Strowman title reign. And if you're one of the more paranoid people that have been saying this is just going to be a handoff, like he's just going to hold the title for a bit until Roman gets back, or this whole thing with Bray, like, oh, he's definitely losing to Bray Wyatt, this might give credence to those fears. So, as reported via sportskita.com, it turns out that what they said is that they've shown faith in Braun Strowman, but there's a lack of depth at the top of SmackDown, and that's why they've been bringing in guys like John Cena and Goldberg. Now, without Roman Reigns, there aren't many people left that Strowman can face, especially on the heel side. You've technically got Daniel Bryan, but he's a face and he's involved in something else. So there aren't that many opportunities. This, to me, looks like they're trying to revert back to what their plan was in January. That is to put the title on Bray Wyatt again and wait for Roman Reigns to be ready. So this addresses two things at once. One, it addresses the idea that they're blacklisting Roman Reigns. It's basically saying, now they're just waiting for him to get back where he's comfortable to come back, and then they're going to strap the title on him. Two, this addresses the idea that, again, just a guy you just put over just because your guy wasn't there, and now you're going to put over Bray Wyatt just so he can put over Roman Reigns or have a match with Roman going forward. So a lot of bad here if this does turn out to be the case. Not that I would love to see Bray Wyatt win the championship again, but bad in terms of for Braun Strowman going forward. What are your opinions on this?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is really difficult for Braun's career. Braun's a fantastic competitor, and again, don't always agree with everything he says because he's a very outspoken guy, but he deserves a good run with this belt, and quite frankly, you can build stars. We've talked about this. Sometimes it takes a moment like this to build the best stars. It took a moment where we were devoid of talent to get DX. It took a moment where we were slowly losing talent to get the breakout of the Heartbreak Kid, you know. So I think you could probably go multiple different ways with this and see some other guys compete for the title, rather than just strapping the rocket ship back on Bray and saying, hey, you can have this till Roman gets back.
I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on this. I obviously don't like the idea of 50-50 booking and doing this whole back and forth hip hop in the championship thing. At the same time, I go of the mindset of you should have never took the title off Bray to begin with. Obviously, we learned about what happened with Goldberg backstage, his politicking. So they may have. I mean, I'm not going to say they may have had their hands tied behind their back because they're not. They're WWE. You don't want someone to win the title. You tell Goldberg this is what's going to happen. You're going to lose. You don't like it. Too effing bad. Don't have the match.
Please.
So yeah. So I just. You booked yourself in the corner. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think you're worse off, obviously, if you do put Bray Wyatt over in this case, because then, yeah, Braun looks probably worse off. Depending on how you book it. If you book it a certain way, you could probably wheeze your way out of Braun losing this match. Just like I think you could probably wheeze your way out of Bray Wyatt losing this match too, because if Bray doesn't necessarily need to win the championship to look strong, while again, you're righting a wrong in the idea that he should have never lost it to begin with. There are ways you can go about this to maybe you can salvage both characters so that everyone comes out of this looking strong. That's me putting a lot of faith in SmackDown's creative team, which is why I'm so concerned about this. So for someone like me, who has been one of the paranoid guys going, oh God, don't mess this up, don't mess this up, don't mess this up, This is like pouring gasoline on a wildfire. I'm so scared.
Yeah, this is not going to be a fun time. So in other news, we go across to All Elite Wrestling and the American Nightmare Cody. So back in November, Cody filed for the trademarks to multiple former WCW show themes, including Bash at the Beach, The Match Beyond, Slamboree, and Super Brawl, all four of which were developed by Dusty Rhodes. Dusty came up with these names and the ideas for these shows, and he wanted to bring them in as intellectual property for All Elite Wrestling. It took them 5 months, but WWE has officially filed on April 23rd for a standard 90-day opposition to the filing of the trademarks by All Elite Wrestling, so they have until July 22nd to file their opposition. This is an extension, of course, to the original injunction. This is very interesting. These are names that AEW, one of which they've already used, others of which I'm sure they plan to use in production going forward as they begin to expand their pay-per-view schedule from the 4 pay-per-views that they're at right now to 6 and 8, so on and so forth. In addition, a little bit of trademark news. Officially, Cody trademarked the name Dusty Rhodes on March 24th, and as of earlier this week, the name Cody Rhodes officially ended its trademark with the trademark ended with WWE, and they allowed it to expire. Cody has picked it up, and neither of them have been disputed by WWE, so both of those have been given the blessing of World Wrestling Entertainment. The Rhodes name does belong back to Cody, and we just have to wait and see what happens with these 4 shows.
So, a couple things here. One, I wonder how Cody having the name Dusty Rhodes in his possession, how that will affect the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic that's been happening on NXT every year. I would assume he probably would just let that go because it's something that's honoring his father and, you know, continuing to just add to the legacy of the Rhodes name. So I don't think he'd probably do anything about that. Now, what does come to mind in regards to this whole trademark battle between the AEW and WWE in regards to all these pay-per-view names? I think this is just sheer pettiness from WWE. This is just WWE trying to get AEW caught up in litigation, legal litigation. They don't, in my opinion, I don't think WWE really cares about these pay-per-view names. They don't plan on using them, at least not in the foreseeable future. This is just WWE trying to make AEW work as hard as possible and struggle as much as they can to get these names. They're just trying to push it off. Say, yo, you want these names, that's fine, but we're going to add as much BS as possible to make it so that way either you're going to just say, okay, we give up and quit and we walk away and you don't get the names, or you do get them, but you're going to have to pay so much money caught up in the court system. It's going to take so long that in our eyes, at least that's a victory, right? Even if we do lose the names of the trademarks. So, in my opinion, it's just sheer pettiness from WWE because, like I said, they don't care about these names. Clearly, they're either using them for live shows or they just aren't using them at all.
Well, and this is the thing that bothers me. These are names that mean nothing to World Wrestling Entertainment. You said that, but they're using brand new pay-per-view names like Great Balls of Fire. So it's not like you didn't have the opportunity to bring back Bash at the Beach or bring back Slamboree or something along those lines. You just haven't used them.
Yeah, it just seems like, and I am speculating. I don't know what the end goal is, but it just feels like to me this is just WWE just trying to make AEW's job so much more harder than it needs to be. That was a sentence. Yep. So I do have a story, speaking of All Elite Wrestling, about Britt Baker apparently getting accused of stealing Bayley's gimmick. This, of course, comes from comicbook.com. Reportedly, she's getting backlash from the IWC, mainly Bayley stans and fans of WWE, basically saying that her gimmick is similar to what Bayley has been doing since last October as SmackDown Women's Champion, claiming to be a role model. So Baker, on a recent episode of Talk is Jericho, outright addressed these accusations. She said, and quote, "No, we did not steal the role model gimmick from Bayley. That's like a daily thing, and I know we've talked about it too. The inspiration came from you, actually, from Chris Jericho, for the role model gimmick, and I don't want to say I don't know totally what's going on with Raw and SmackDown because I try to stay in touch with it, but at the same time, I'm a dentist and a professional wrestler. I don't know every single storyline or what's going on each week. So it wasn't until I actually said the words role model on TV and then I got the Bayley army coming at me. You're stealing her gimmick, that I even knew she was calling herself that too. Granted, totally different uses of the words, totally different gimmicks as we call it, but I just kind of want to set the record straight that no, we didn't steal that from anybody. Well, I stole it from you, Jericho, not from her.
Right, well, and the thing is, it's I get it. I do. I understand where you could look at it and go, wow, that is the same gimmick, except Britt Baker's doing it well.
Yeah, it's
like Britt makes me tune in to watch what she's going to say.
Well,
Bayley makes me cringe.
It's like what happened with you last week. I mean, people didn't think they were similar until you heard a certain phrase, 2 words, like kind of like what happened with you and the Charlotte Mia Yim whole storyline. You heard good hand, and you immediately put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, oh my god, they're like stealing, when it's probably just coincidence. Like it's only Britt Baker explaining the same thing, and she actually goes further in saying that she's actually a fan of both Sasha Banks and Bayley. She loves what they've been doing, and she hopes that they have success in the future. So I think there's nothing to this. I think Britt Baker, it was an honest mistake. I don't even think, not even a mistake. She's not stealing Bayley's gimmick. The two really aren't that similar. I mean, except for the fact that they're both heels, and they both are narcissistic as hell. So that's like every wrestling heel gimmick for the most part. So You can't really say she's stealing Bayley's gimmick.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. We'll stay with AEW for a minute. Chris Jericho was addressing the recent releases from World Wrestling Entertainment. He said he feels really bad for the guys and everything that's happened. He feels from a business standpoint that WWE was built that they actually could handle a situation like this, and that it's just a shame that things went the way that they did, and that while he is not really on the talent recruitment side of things, it's not in his wheelhouse, he would bet very good money that they'll be bringing some of those guys in, and that some of them will be going overseas likely as well. That was then addressed as well by Eric Bischoff, who said that while he's not entirely sure what AEW might be going for, if I was a betting man, I was in Vegas, I would probably put most of my money on guys who we've seen the most in the last 6 months on WWE television. So guys like Rowan, Rusev. Ideally, EC3 and Zack Ryder also get to sign there. I really hope that Bischoff is wrong about that, because I like those two guys a lot more than I like Rowan. But what's your take on it?
It's essentially just what we've been saying from the jump, that a lot of the bigger names here are probably going to land in spots like AEW or New Japan. Some of the smaller guys that haven't really been utilized as much in WWE and really probably won't get utilized maybe as much elsewhere, really. Probably going to go not by the wayside, but maybe go to some of the smaller, the smaller. Well, I'm not saying that Ring of Honor, Impact are smaller, but going to maybe some of the lesser known companies, and, testing the waters there before maybe eventually popping up in a company like AEW. Maybe, we don't know. Or and we've seen guys go on these like triumphant indie scene tours and then find their way back in WWE. So
not Cody in that
not
case,
Cody, no, but yeah, like guys like Drew McIntyre who literally went all over the world in terms of the indie scene, was Impact World Champion, I believe, at one point, and then now he's a world champion in WWE. So we've seen these guys do that multiple times. So wouldn't surprise me at all if a couple of these guys made their way back. I don't think Rusev will come back. He's been very outspoken about his relationship with WWE for a while now. I feel like that was burning at both ends. So that's probably just done. That's soured away. I'm interested to see what actually happens with Lana once her contract is up, if she even makes it to the end of her contract. I don't know what they're planning, especially with this whole Bobby Lashley thing. Looks like they're probably trying to write her off TV. So interested to see where that goes. But I do think, I've said it since it happened, I do think guys like the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, will eventually find their way back to WWE. So guys like that. So it's interesting. We don't have obviously all the facts. None of us could really know what's going to happen going forward, but that's just my thoughts and opinions on that story. So in keeping in line with the theme of All Elite Wrestling, and actually with Britt Baker, we're going to go back to her interview with Chris Jericho on the Talk is Jericho podcast. And she actually discusses kind of the culture of AEW in regards to All Elite Wrestling talent going to WWE shows. She says, "So I've always asked ahead of time, either the Bucks or Tony Khan, whoever I've always said, is it okay if I go?" It gets to the point where Tony's like, "Britt, stop asking me. Of course you can always go. Why would we not want you to go support your boyfriend? We're not like a cult. It's not like you can't go there. It's fine," Baker recalled. "First time that they put me on, I was just sitting in my little comp ticket section. The camera was nowhere near us at any point, at any time. This was very early on. This was before we were on TV or anything. And I think we had the one pay-per-view. Stephanie McMahon comes out and she sits in the seat right next to me, or there might have been a seat between us. And they zoom in on her for her. And hey, I'm in the crowd spot. And I'm like 2 seats down, just like looking at her. And I truly don't know if they knew who I was at that point or not, because it was so early on. They didn't have the camera anywhere near us until that point, but it was actually like a little funny little meme. It looks like, mugging her in it a little bit. So He then continues on. The second time, I knew that Adam Cole was winning the championship title, so I definitely wanted to go. I didn't want to just sit backstage watching on a TV. I was like, is there any way that I can watch in the crowd? Because they were doing crazy cage match bumps and all kinds of stuff, and I was terrified. I was like, no, I want to be out there. They said, yep, absolutely. You know, I was texting with the one security guard. We got you covered. Don't worry. So I'm in my seat. Everything's good. Then for his match, they moved me and they said, hey, you'll be fine here because you're behind the commentary table. And because the match is in the cage, the camera's not going to come out here at all. And to me, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And it wasn't until the very end he took this disgusting bump off the top of the cage where I don't even know which camera it was because I was looking in the ring, but it got me. Of course, after the fact, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon were very apologetic to me after catching me on camera. I didn't even know that I got until I went backstage in Gorilla to check on Adam, and Triple H came out to me right away. He's like, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean for that to happen. I'm kind of like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, we got you on the camera with your reaction to the bump. I'm so sorry. They didn't know, the head of production didn't know who you were. Do I believe that? I don't know. But he was very apologetic, super nice. Him and Stephanie both were like, we're so sorry about that. I hope you don't get in trouble, which Tony didn't care about at all. So this was, of course, reported via the WrestleZone. So what did you think about that?
I thought it was really interesting. I think, looking at it from the perspective of the Wednesday Night Wars too. Tony has the utmost respect, it seems like, for Triple H and for NXT and, for the most part, WWE and their employees as well. And you can tell that Triple H seems to have a genuine care for guys like Adam Cole who have their loved ones over in AEW. So it gives me hope for the future that I could see something like a World Wrestling Classic when Triple H eventually takes the reins, because it does seem like he's open to it and doesn't view it so much as competition as he does just another brand of wrestling, another breed, and that's perfectly fine. We don't have to have the monopoly on it. So I thought that was really interesting insight. Additionally, it was just very cool to hear that Britt Baker was able to continue a normal relationship with Adam Cole, was able to be there with him, and that Tony Khan was just like, why would I care if you go support your boyfriend? I mean, he's in the other company. Congratulations. Go check it out.
Yeah, the reaction from Tony Khan and AEW management doesn't surprise me at all. And while I'm not surprised that Triple H and Stephanie had that reaction, I am surprised that there's no backlash at all from any other members of WWE brass in regards to this happening, or that this wasn't some kind of planned thing to maybe get her in trouble with AEW at all. But it does seem genuine. They were just kind of oh my God, we're so sorry. We did not mean to put you on TV. And then obviously, the way she explained it the first time it happened, probably didn't even know who the F she was anyway. AEW had literally had one pay-per-view. They weren't even on TV yet. So they're probably whatever. Our focus is Stephanie McMahon. So it kind of puts to bed a lot of that stuff. WWE was being manipulative and maniacal about this. They have an evil plan. No, it was just something random that happened. And while Vince McMahon and his little brand of puppets seem to definitely have ulterior motives to a lot of the stuff that they do, I feel like Triple H and the way he runs his brand is a little bit different.
Yeah, Triple H seems very genuine, and it's good to hear that Stephanie McMahon is up in that with him, that she is very genuine, and that she seems to be much along the idea that, competition is good, that, that we don't have to have the monopoly. And quite frankly, when it comes down to it, if WWE wanted somebody, they could pretty much go get them. I mean, I love All Elite Wrestling. They're my favorite company by far, but I mean, if Vince wanted Kenny, he could back the Brinks truck back up to Kenny Omega's house. And I mean, yeah, it's different because he's an EVP, but that was just...
I disagree with you on that only because they tried that already. They tried it hard. They did back the Brinks truck, and Kenny hard vetoed that. So
Allegedly.
Reports came out, like they said, Vince literally, when Kenny was still in New Japan, they had already got AJ, Joe, Nakamura, the Good Brothers, and they were like, we want Kenny, and Kenny turned down the offers multiple times, and finally McMahon was like, what, you want John Cena money? You want Brock Lesnar money? Like, just threw it all the zeros at Kenny. And Kenny's like, look, all the money in the world, it's not going to make me come wrestle in WWE. Like, I like the situation. I like what we're building over here in New Japan. How ironic that the man, a couple years down the line,
left New Japan,
ends up in Coast forming AEW. He probably had no idea that was going to happen, though. That's all foresight that I'm sure he didn't have. But
no,
yeah.
And the funny thing is, you hear about the early talks about it, and it's like, Cody came up with this idea a long time ago. And then Nick and Matt Jackson were kind of in on it here and there. They were throwing ideas out. And then once everything was like set in stone, already like talked to Tony Khan and TNT and everything. They're like, hey, Kenny, we're starting a company. He's like, what?
Yeah.
You're what?
So, that's the only thing that I disagree with you on. It's just that part. It's just because Kenny, no, I think he's a hardcore indie guy. Do I think we might see Kenny at some point, maybe when he's like retired and like he just wants to get in that Hall of Fame? He might pop up like when he's at the end of his career for like an appearance or something.
A Jushin Thunder Liger match.
Yeah, he might pull a Sting. Just pop in. It's the one guy that WWE never got. Like I could see that, but you never know.
So news now out of wrestling news. Wow, that's really hard. Wrestling news on wrestling news. WWE reportedly is willing to grant a release to just about anyone who is interested. Prior to the outbreak of the pandemic, of course, WWE was locking down talent left or right so that their big competitors don't go to All Elite Wrestling. With the release of 30-plus talent, and then recently Cain Velasquez, one of the two of which I'm very, very sad to hear about. The company is now saying that they have a little bit of a different idea. WWE is willing to grant releases to just about anyone who requests one. Basically, if a talent wants out, they can go. It'll be interesting to see if anyone really does want out, especially during such an uncertain time. Additionally, it's kind of interesting to look at it from this perspective. Yeah, anybody who wants out can go, but how far does that stretch? Because, they're very small rumors, but you hear rumors all the time about guys like AJ not happy because the Good Brothers are gone, or like Shinsuke wasn't happy with his role, and it's like, how far are you willing to stretch that anyone? But to be honest, this is a good thing for the business. It's a good thing for the industry. And, of course, WWE, they just released 30-plus guys, so they're in no position to say, yeah, no, I'm not granting your release. I just released 30 other people, but you need to stay. So it'll be interesting to see how that folds out.
So first, I'm glad that me and you kind of had a similar mindset in regards to Meng being a little bit cynical in regards to the, everyone can go thing. Because that was my first thought was, anybody? Like if Roman walked up and
tomorrow and goes, yeah, Gallows and Anderson said that they have this big gig coming up in New Japan. I want out.
Yeah,
you gonna let him go?
But I actually thought about this a little bit, and I kind of believe him. And here's my reasoning behind this: is the fact that it kind of stretches back to the story that I reported last week, or that I addressed. Not reported. I'm not a reporter. That I talked about in
we broke the news to you here live on the Wrevolution podcast.
Yes, no, it goes back to the report that I talked about last week, and the fact that WWE has this mindset that, they're not afraid of talent leave and go to All Elite Wrestling or any indie company. And this just kind of pushes that narrative. Like, WWE kind of has this idea where, look, I feel like, especially with Vince McMahon, we always know loyalty is a huge thing. And especially with what's happening right now and what happened with releases and everything, I feel like they're at a point where they're just kind of going, you know what? If you want to go, go. Look. I kind of compare this back to the WCW thing when talent were requesting their release and they were up and leaving all the time. I feel like they're back to that mindset of, look, You want to go join the competition, that's fine. You go, have fun, but just know when we come for you, we're going to come hard. Like, we like what we're doing over here, and the guys that stay, God dang it, we're going to do everything we can to push them. I guarantee you, the more guys that do up and decide to leave, guys that just go out, and WWE's probably going to lose a good amount of talent from this. I see it. I predict maybe they do lose. People do take them at their word and request their release. Guys like we talked about earlier, Apollo Crews maybe. I mean, again, I did say he's maybe a company guy, but people that are in that position maybe. But for the people that stay through all of this, I do feel like down the line, WWE's always proven this, they do reward loyalty. So you might start to see people that maybe wouldn't have gotten a push before maybe start getting pushed and get rewarded for their loyalty. That's what happened to DX. It's what happened to Stone Cold. It's what happened to The Undertaker. Guys that said, no, I'm not going to go to WCW. You're crazy. I'm here. I'm here in WWE. I'm fighting for this company. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. You want to go and cut your teeth in AEW? Cool. That's fine. But for the guys that want to stay here and actually want to build this brand, yeah, we're gonna treat those guys well. So that's kind of the way I think about this personally.
And it kind of goes to the college football perspective. And I hate to say this as a Michigan State fan, but the University of Michigan, one of their biggest slogans: "Those who stay will be champions." So you got to think of it from that perspective. I mean, this is like a University of Michigan kind of. You know, these guys are long established, biggest names, one of the biggest names. I mean. Michigan's the second most winningest, or probably third or fourth. I think Alabama's first, and Notre Dame. Like that.
I think history wise, maybe. I'm not sure, but I mean, obviously more recent. It's clearly not Michigan.
It's a joke recently, but
yeah.
All-time wins. I mean, they're up there in the top, and the championships and all that stuff. A storied history. A stranglehold on the area until as of late, which again would work exactly with WWE. So, maybe there isn't as much credence to it this time around as there was the last time around, but you never know. So it'll be interesting to see if this blossoms into more of a competition than it is. And we talk about this every week, twice a week, once on the weekend wrap up where we talk about what's happening that's building the war, and once on Wednesdays when we talk about the Wednesday Night Wars. This is blossoming into a full-out battle between these guys, and they just don't know it yet.
And well, here's the thing, too. I think one company definitely knows it, and I think that's WWE. Look, here's the thing. WWE's at the weakest it could possibly be right now. If you're going to take a strike, you're going to take aim at WWE, now's the time to do it. They are vulnerable with the collapse of the XFL combined with this crisis that's been happening, releasing all the superstars, empty arena matches, plummeting ratings. If there's a time to take your shot and go for the kill, now would be the time to do it. And I think WWE realizes that even though AEW hasn't gone that route, they've been very pro-industry. Well, we're just the alternative. That's kind of been their mindset from the get-go here. I think WWE realizes that not everybody has that mindset. Probably not everybody in AEW has that mindset. And whether you like it or not, they recognize there's blood in the water now. And when that shark gets that scent, it's going to come.
Yeah, the analogy I was going to say, WWE is a prize fighter. They are the Mike Tyson, or the Joe Louis, if you will. And AEW they got a fight with this guy, and this guy's got a massive cut across the top of his eye, and it's busted open.
Yeah,
he's vulnerable. When a prize fighter is vulnerable, that's when you strike.
Yeah, I would compare it to use the boxing analogy. It is like a boxer at the end of its career. It's like Mike Tyson at the end of his career. Like all these greats who, they just want that one last fight, and it just doesn't work out that way. I mean, sometimes you gotta go out earlier than you like to preserve your legacy. And it kind of feels like they're at the end, they're like, they just want to keep fighting. They're that tired old boxer, and they recognize that, and now it's like, AEW eventually is going to go, no, now's our time to put you down, old man. And that's kind of seems like that's where it's going to go going
maybe
forward.
We're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's just a heavyweight boxer that's a little bit overweight right now and needs to shed some pounds.
Yeah, they could go.
Out.
They could go full Tyson Fury and come back and reclaim their title. We don't know what's gonna happen here, so it is very interesting. I have just 2 more stories left, and one of them is surprisingly not about AEW anymore. It's about WWE. Of course, it's actually about former WWE talent, and that is which they were known in WWE as the Revival. Of course, now they're known as Dax Hartwood and Cass Wheeler. Of course, they revealed their indie scene name now as the Revolt. Well, there's a problem with that, as Sportskita.com goes a little bit more insightful about. It's the fact that there's already an indie tag team that's been using the name The Revolt for years now, and they're not happy that they just lost their name to 2 former elite WWE guys coming to the indie scene now, and they view it as, they're just getting their name stolen. So they kind of go into it. It's reportedly it's from the North Carolina indie scene. It's Conley and Riley. They've actually invested in using the names, and there's merchandising for the Revolt for quite a long time. Caleb Conley actually tweeted out in response to PW Insider, which said, the Revival's post-WWE tag team name may have been revealed, and Caleb Conley said, I gotta say, it's a real good name, almost like a tag team should have been doing it years ago, #Revolt. So, and Riley did say after, hey, at Dax Hartwood and at Cass Wheeler, if you need ideas for merch or gear or anything, we got 5 years worth of it just bopping around. So from their perspective, they gotta look at it as like, again, the former elite WWE guys coming out to the indie scene, and they don't know nothing about nothing in regards to the indie scene. So they just think, oh, this name's clearly available, let's just use that. Well, meanwhile, you're the smaller indie talent from the North Carolina indie scene, probably not getting too much press about that, and that's our name. You can't just take that. We want that. So you got to feel bad for those guys. I wonder how their Dax and Cash are going to respond to this. If they're going to actually maybe give in, maybe go for a different name. If they're going to take offense to this, maybe fight it, or if they're maybe going to go, we're sorry. Maybe we can throw a little bit of royalties your way in regards to the use of the name, try to work something out. I don't know how this is going to go, but it's definitely interesting to think about. So it's something that doesn't get talked about in regards to names like this. I mean, obviously the Revolt, you would think, I would think, at least coming off of WWE, that's gotta be something that someone would already have, right? So I don't know. I just think there wasn't a lot of hindsight put into that.
To be fair, though, you have to look at it from this perspective as well. Is the name trademarked? Is it copyrighted? If it's not trademarked or copyrighted, they have no way of knowing that someone's using that name. We've talked about that before when we were trying to find a name for our podcast channel. And like a week before we found our name, we found out, holy crap, someone has the name that we wanted. So we did come out with this, and technically, you want to go ahead and check it out. There is a Philippine Wrestling Revolution that is a small Filipino indie wrestling company that has this as one of their pay-per-views. But guess what? It's not trademarked in the United States. So, we only checked the trademarks in the U.S. We found that it was available. We've been using it. And, still not trademarked in the United States because we don't have that kind of money. So, anybody could just, tomorrow, someone from one of the big YouTube channels could go and say, you know what? I'm going to start my own channel, and I'm going to call it The Wrevolution with a W, and all of a sudden, congratulations, we are out of a name.
Yeah, I would think the difference between us and them is that they have been using it merchandising-wise. They have been selling products using the name The Revolt, so I would think they probably did put something in regards to a trademark or a licensing or something for the name if you're going to sell merchandise. with the name Revolt on it. So I think I would at least hope so. If you're going to sell anything with your name on it, you should probably get it trademarked at the very least.
I suppose it would just entirely depend on whether or not they were able to afford it. I mean, merchandising rights are not cheap. And if they're, a small time indie group, yeah, I mean, small time indie people still sell merch, but.
Well, and it would depend on what they're trying to do. If you're trying to, get the whole rights of the name, that's different than just having merchandising rights for selling t-shirts. So that's where I'm interested to see is if they do try to if they do have merchandising rights, if they try to build a case on this, or again, how this goes. If maybe Dax and Cash try to build a relationship and say, yo, we didn't know, we're sorry. So, I mean, we don't know. As far as I know, though, neither tag team has legal claim to the name, so we'll be interested to see if maybe there's a rush to try to grab the rights of this name, which you gotta think that would be, preferable for the Revolt, Dax and Cash, because, they got WWE money, so,
Well, and I was just going to say, I mean, the other thing you maybe look at is the Revolt's already trademarked how many things. FTR is officially trademarked. The Top Guys, trademarked. Shatter Machine, trademarked. So, I mean, they probably are going to go out and do this. I'm sure they already have somebody. There's no way you unveil a new tag team name and then just go, leave it public domain.
Yeah, they're probably going to try to trademark it. I would think maybe, if I'm the guys from the North Carolina scene, I try to maybe get some money out of it. Be like, you know what, you want to take the name, that's fine, but, at least can we get something out of it? We'll change our name, we get it, we're small time. Or maybe go, maybe no. Can we maybe, sure. We are a smaller company. Could we still use the name without you guys, coming after us,
I think that would be the ideal thing is for the FKA Revival, the Revolt, to come out and just say, hey, you guys have had this name for a long time. You didn't have the money to trademark it for licensing rights or whatever. We understand that you want to continue using the name. You're more than welcome to continue using it. If you make it big, congratulations. You're more than welcome to use it. But we already are invested in this. We're not going to change our name. Maybe this will bring you guys good fortune. I mean, all of a sudden people know your name now.
Yes.
Nobody in the world would have known who you were fighting on the North Carolina indie scene as a tag team for 5 years. So maybe this is a good thing for you. So we move on now. Vince McMahon has announced that WWE just might be moving away from the live event business, which, of course, is very depressing to the two of us. House shows are our favorite thing at WWE. We are sick, twisted humans. House shows are amazing.
Well, we'll say Detroit house shows are amazing.
Yes, Detroit's house shows have been amazing. Between the two that we've been to, of course, one of which the main event was Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins in a street fight, and the other was...
How dare you? A Detroit street fight. How dare you?
About that. And then, of course, the other was the last throw at the Joe. Brock Lesnar was there. Samoa Joe was supposed to be there. He got injured. Braun Strowman was there. John Cena fought Rusev. The last event at Joe Louis Arena before it closed its doors. But it looks like WWE is starting to consider moving away from the live event business. Live shows, of course, halted recently as a result of the pandemic. But even before the virus hit, there were whispers that WWE might consider scrapping this. And this is, of course, coming from Wrestle Talk, so don't want to take credit for this myself because, I'm not a reporter, unlike Marcus, who apparently is our lead reporter and breaks news himself.
Yes.
There's been multiple factors, including drop in attendance numbers. But we've been seeing that across the board when it comes to WWE shows, especially Smackdown. WWE Smackdown and WWE live events have seen a drastic drop in attendance numbers. And I'm not sure if it's the quality, which it could be, or just that they're outpricing themselves. You know, with a drop in quality, sometimes you have to cheapen the ticket prices a little bit. You see that with sports. Maybe not all the time, but quite often. I mean, when the Detroit Tigers were awful, their tickets were like $12 a piece for the outfield section. And
hell, the Lions, they send out a letter every year. Every time they suck, they decrease tickets all the time.
Won't be changing your ticket. Well, this is the funny thing. Because the NFL, everybody raises their ticket prices. Instead of lowering their ticket prices, the Lions just go, we're not going to raise them.
Yep.
So that's good news. But yeah, WWE maybe needs to look into that. And additionally, one of the other things we talked about is live events are just as expensive as televised shows.
Well, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So maybe offering the possibility of a cheaper event or going to a smaller venue. We've talked about that as well. They're always trying to fill, 12, 14, 16,000 seat venues when many cities, including ours, have 4,000 to 8,000 seat venues where you could feasibly host a show.
So I look at it from this perspective and the fact that while I do agree with you, and I have agreed with you on trying to sell out maybe smaller arenas, I understand in regards to their pricing for tickets why they would maybe be hesitant to do that. And that's the fact that while maybe the larger stars with the major contracts, like Seth Rollins, Roman, people like that, whose contracts are a little bit more guaranteed money-wise based on the yearly salary, why that's not going to affect them. The smaller guys who don't get a lot of TV time, that they depend on those tours, on those live shows for their income. That's where they make the majority of their money. We see guys like the Zack Ryders, like the Rusevs when he wasn't getting his push. Those were the guys that really shined on the indie scene, that we saw them, whether it was in great comedy matches or in hardcore extreme bouts for championships, apparently. That's where these guys get their pushes. That's where they get their limelight. And it's how they kind of build a cult following for themselves. While they may not get all the TV time, you go travel around from town to town and guys see you perform and they want to see more of you. You start to get the push a little bit more. I want to see this guy pop on TV. Why is he not on TV as much? So these guys...
That's where I fell in love with the Ascension.
Yeah, so these guys depend on stuff like that. Not only just money-wise, but also potentially for pushes. So I could see why WWE would be hesitant to not only get rid of live shows altogether, but to decrease ticket prices. So it is unfortunate if they do decide to go in a different direction and just fully... I don't think they'd ever fully get rid of live shows, but to definitely have less, that would definitely hurt the smaller guys on the roster. I'd be interested to see if there's anything they could do to address that. Maybe give them some other time, maybe more TV. Obviously you can't do more TV time because there's only so much TV time to go around. But with a roster as large as WWE's, I don't know how you'd go about addressing that situation in terms of giving proper compensation to all your guys.
Yeah, I think you have an important point on that one. Hopefully they're able to continue the circuit, but news reports that WWE is looking to scrap the WWE live show circuit.
So, I was wrong. I do have two more stories, but I'm just going to touch on one of them, and then I'll save the other for another episode, because we are getting just a little long-winded.
Just a wee bit.
So, I'll touch on the more important, I think, of the two, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. And that is backstage talk on Vince McMahon's Smackdown demeanor and really kind of how he's been acting backstage for the last couple weeks. So this is, of course, reported by WrestlingInc.com, and this comes from a Twitter insider who posted a screenshot of a conversation he had with an apparent WWE source as people were commenting online about Vince's demeanor from this last episode of Smackdown. They seemed that he was kind of all over the place in his crazy rant. Well, according to this guy, it kind of fits into how Vince has been acting IRL. He says, that is what he's been like the last 2 weeks or so, I'm seeing. think this pandemic, Mania getting canceled, XFL getting killed, has finally got to him when he's at the F it part of it all. Screw it. Vince could be wild. So he's just kind of slowly losing his mind. It seems like he's taken a lot of blows. We talked about that. Vince has been getting hit from pretty much every direction these last couple weeks. And it seems like the old guy's just, it's taking its toll. It's too much for him. I mean, he is... I don't know if he's in his 80s. Is he in his 80s yet? I don't know how old Vince is.
So.
I think he's late 70s.
Still.
I think he's like 78 or 79, something like that. But he's not a spring chicken, that's for sure. And you got to think.
Oh my God, I have the Google machine.
And you got to think all this stress, all this that's all the attacks he's been getting coming under fire from wrestlers and fans in the wrestling community these past couple weeks, that it's got to be taking its toll on Vince. And maybe he's just seeing the XFL fail so spectacularly for the second time. Now he's getting sued, having to release talent, seeing big guys that he misused in his company go and be big stars and build their own company that rivals your own. You just got to think maybe at this point he's just like, screw it, like F it all. He's just losing his mind, which we always thought Vince was crazy, but I want to see what actual slowly going insane piece by piece, day by day Vince turns out to be, which that could be a scary sight. And it could actually be explanation to some of the wild, insane booking decisions we've been seeing happening these past couple weeks. Go ahead and hit us, by the way. It seems like you found the information with what's the date?
He's in fact a spring chicken. He's 74.
74. Wow, he's
70. Would have never thought it. He's in great shape though, so I really shouldn't be talking like that. It's interesting to hear that Vince has been. I mean, he's been going through so much recently, and I don't want to make excuses for him. In fact, I want to do the opposite and just sit here and be like, "You deserve this." But again, I'm a caring person. I don't want to see anybody go through that kind of situation. So, it's rather difficult to see Vince slowly kind of losing it, and I would like to hope that it is actually just from the stresses of life and that there's nothing else going on with him. Hopefully Vince McMahon is just going through, some issues with losing the XFL and getting sued and Mania and Roman and AEW and how did I F up Cody, and by God, I should have had Kenny in my company, and AJ was on my show 15 years before he went anywhere else, and a lot of things weigh on the mind.
And here I kind of, a thought that popped in my mind actually is that, look, I get that Vince always has this I have to win mentality. He's never going to give up. He is John Cena incarnate. Like, he refuses to lose. He won't give up. But at a certain point, man, tap out. Like, if all this is getting to you, the stress of everything, and you are starting to make wildly irrational decisions and come off as maybe a little erotic, then maybe it is time for Vince to, well, I mean, I've been saying it's time forever, but especially now, time for Vince to, step away and, hand the reins over to your son-in-law Trips and let him, especially if you do start to, again, make wildly irrational decisions. At some point, the board's got to step in, right? If we do start to see crazy Vince, at some point, I mean, I know people tend to let Vince do whatever he wants, but stockholders matter. And if things start to take a hit financially, I got to think at some point they go, Vince, we love you. You've done so much for us, but dude, you got to go.
Two things. First of all, stock owners matter. That's an interesting statement. Second of all,
they do. When you're a publicly traded company, they definitely do.
I mean, they do matter. I'm a stockholder, but secondly, I apologize for correcting you. Those words just mean two very different things. I don't want Vince McMahon making erotic decisions on Smackdown ever.
Yeah, I said erratic, but
no.
I definitely did.
Tape will tell.
I'm only writing the tape, so you watch that.
So our last story then for the night, as you know, Renee Young is on WWE Backstage on Fox Sports 1 this week. She was with Xavier Woods and Booker T, XW. Get better. Hope to see you soon. When all of a sudden she was pranked by her husband, Jon Moxley. So Mox brought their dog onto the camera and kind of jumped and scared her. And, Booker T and Xavier both laughed it off, and Renee laughed it off, and everybody was having a good time, and ha 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 ha. And it's all fun and games until Vince finds out that the AEW World Champion was on his show on Fox Sports 1. And then it's not fun and games for anybody. So reportedly, he is not a happy camper when it comes to Renee or John, or really to either of the guys who just kind of went, that's funny. That's the world champion from that other company.
CM Punk was one of those guys, right? So he gives no F's about that. Like, he's like, LOL, got another guy's champions on your show. Suck it, Vince. So you gotta think he doesn't care, right?
Yeah, so that was interesting, of course. And then Moxley was interviewed about that and about his relationship with WWE. Moxley said, of course, I feel awful. I was just trying to play a prank, and this time he's like, I didn't realize quite what she was doing. I know she was on with somebody on a webcam. I just kind of jumped in. He's like, but, I kind of figured it was backstage. I didn't think it was such a big deal. He's like, but I guess I didn't really think about the fact that, very strained relationship with the company. Of course, then, he talks about, he still has a very strained relationship with the company, that he's so thankful for Tony Khan. The one thing in this article that I really liked, and I'm not going to cite where this is from, because by God, I don't want you to read this. Whoever wrote this article, go back and get an English degree, please, for the love of God. If I have to read an article with 3 misspelled words in the first paragraph, I have a problem. But Moxley talks about his time with Tony Khan and says that pitching ideas to Tony Khan is like a kid in a candy shop. He pitches an idea to Tony Khan, and Tony Khan takes it to the next level and goes, but what if we did this? He's like, in comparison to pitching something to Vince McMahon where he'd go, but what if instead we made fart jokes?
So this is rare. We've gotten 3 different forms of Nick Cavalli. We had nap mode earlier. Now we've had hashtag grammar mode Cavalli appear. No, in all seriousness,
I was pissed reading this article. How do you spell the TH?
That is
and
fantastic.
And they spell where WH space WERE. There's what are you doing? The WH doesn't belong there at all. I'm sorry.
That's tasteful. Getting our news from reputable sources. That's the Wrevolution Pro Wrestling Podcast way. But yeah, this is all unfortunate. If you're John, you were just trying to play a harmless prank. If you're Renee, you had no idea that was going to happen. But it's just kind of a sign of the times we're living in. Obviously, every network is there, especially sports stations and major news programs are, they're airing stuff from their home or from remote locations where everyone's kind of separate. So stuff like this is bound to happen. We've seen kids pop up on news channels and dogs and stuff like that. The draft, the commissioner was chilling in his freaking comfy chair during the draft. Legs spread, everything.
Rabel's house that first night.
Yeah, so stuff like this is going to happen. I would hope that WWE would be a little bit more understanding. Obviously, this is kind of touches on what we talked about earlier in regards to Vince and co. not caring as much, whereas we can see the reaction from Vince McMahon and his puppet followers that anything regarding AEW is just evil and it's don't even address the competition. Like, it's such nonsense, and it's so petty. I hope that whatever heat she got backstage is minimal. I hope that it was nothing too significant, and I hope that it dies down relatively quickly, because it's petty. Again, there was really nothing she could have done about that. How is she gonna know, right? So
exactly, like, that's not her decision. If you want to get mad at Mox, I guess go ahead.
Is it not Vince's way to punish somebody else via proxy, since you can't get to the other person? I mean, hell,
yeah.
we saw that with the Triple H when they did the whole curtain call when everyone else was going to WCW, and he couldn't get to Scott Hall and Nash, so he couldn't do Shawn Michaels because he's getting pushed. So who'd you go after? You went after Trips. Yes. So this is not the first time we've seen something like this happen, but it's unfortunate.
Alrighty, well, I think that wraps up our news segment for the night, which means we are done with this weekend wrap-up thing.
Yes, this is going to be the end. So, as always, let's go ahead and issue our closing statements here. The Wrevolution Pro Wrestling Podcast is currently only available on YouTube due to the current crisis that is happening. However, if you go ahead and follow us on the iTunes, Spotify, the Google Play Podcast, and the Podbean, then cool, crisp audio, just amazing. Look at this microphone. It was like $200, like something like that. Like, it's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be crisp audio. It's gonna be in your ear holes.
We've invested so much into this company, into this idea, this dream. Maybe we shouldn't say dream on a wrestling podcast right now.
Yikes.
Into this idea. And we're doing it all for you.
Yes. So, yeah. We'll be back audio-wise when this whole thing is over. Of course, you can keep up to date with everything Wrevolution pod-wise by following us on our social media. Links are down in the description below. The Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, all that fantastic stuff. And with that being said, this has been your weekend wrap-up, episode number 9, live from the Studio 6. My name is Marcus White.
Live from the spare bedroom, which has changed 3 times tonight, every time that we've had to cut because my computer hates me. My name is Fight Mode Nick Cavalli.
And this has been the Wrevolution Pro Wrestling Podcast. And as always, we invite you to join
the
Wrevolution.
Have a good night.
Have a fantastic night, guys.